Hi there, sports fans. This is Play It Right TV, and I'm Kinito Henson. Something very, very special. We're here with Coach Tim Cone. We all know that he took part in the Miami Heat Summer League last year. So we want to talk to him about the Miami Heat culture. We also want to talk to him about the NBA Finals between Miami and Denver. Of course, first to 16 wins. That's what's going to happen in the NBA Finals. First team to make 15 wins will win the championship. This was a commemorative book of the Miami Heat back in 2013. And Coach Tim, first of all, you've had a wonderful experience with the Miami Heat, part of their coaching staff in the Summer League. What did you experience in terms of the touted Miami Heat culture?
Well, that's just it. I mean, I think that's the thing that when I came back, people asked me about Miami and what was my experience like. And it was really about immersing myself in their culture. I mean, it wasn't like they ran a new offense or, they did some things we really liked defensively. But the thing we really felt that I felt was really earth shattering to me was being immersed in their culture. It's such a unique culture, and and it's led by Spo and apparently Pat Riley above that, and it's been something that's been consistent through all their years, even back in the times of LeBron and Dwayne and Chris Bosh.
Can you describe that culture?
It's hard driving. I think that's the number one word I always would think of. It's very hard driving. Everything is culture based. They coach in terms of they talk about it a lot. They talk about culture. They talk about Miami culture. When I was with the Miami Heat, there were 12 new players that were brought together. And I think 3 or 4 of them were from the actual Miami team at the end of the bench, but they brought in like 8 to 7 or 8 free agents. And so they talked, the coaching staff constantly talked about culture. And it came down not only about, the way you present yourself, but not only that, it's the way you dress. I mean, we had to have a certain level of how we had to dress. Even when we walked into a meeting, oftentimes in team meetings, guys just walk in the way they want, and just listen up and then go back and maybe, get uniformed up or get their practice jersey on. No, when you're there, you got to have the proper socks. You got to have the proper shorts. You got to have the proper shoes, shirts. If you have anything on their head, one day somebody walked in with a kind of like a scarf or a cap on their head, and one of the coaches came over and took it and threw it across the room and said, that's not how we do things here. No hats in the no headwear during the meetings.
Well, Coach Tim, you were talking about working with some of the players, some of them coming from the roster, some of them free agents. Did you work with any player who's now playing for Miami in the NBA Finals?
Well, yeah. I mean, Highsmith was a guy who was on the team, and Jokic is on the team as well. Not the Jokic, the other Jokic. He got to play, I guess, about at the end of the game, in game 1. But Highsmith came out and played really well. Had like about 14 or 15 points in the second half. And the thing about Highsmith, and he's one of those free agents, came from a Division II school that they discovered. And even while I was with Miami and I was doing my walks with Eric Spoelstra and some of the staff, the guy they talked about the most was Highsmith, because they saw him as an elite defender, as an elite, not just an elite defender, but an elite NBA defender. They felt that there were very few guys out there in the league that could defend like him. And they felt that he could get out there and defend a Giannis or someone like that. And that's what they were really building that team around him. And the Summer League team, they were building around Highsmith. And they called him H. That was his nickname, H. And again, he represented, and he was one of those guys that had played with Miami the previous year, but didn't get off the bench very much, but did play a little bit. But they were grooming him to play more and more. Kind of like what they did with Duncan Robinson. He didn't play much when they first got him, but they just kept giving him opportunity. He grew, and he got into a regular role. Same with Gabe Vincent. I spent a lot of time with Gabe when I was there. He wasn't part of the team, but he was there to watch and just kind of be immersed with the team, hang out with the team. And he sat on the bench with me during the game, so we ended up talking a lot to each other. Wonderful guy. Actually, a really close friend of Sol Mercado. And yeah, they grew up together in Sacramento. Sol was a guy he looked up to because he used to join, he was a younger guy, and used to join the older players. And he said Sol and his buddies would beat him up on the court, and that really toughened him to be the player that he is now. And but Gabe, started off slow, but now look at him. He's a starting point guard. Strus. Strus was the star of their summer league team the year before, and didn't play in the one I was there. But that's all they talked about, and they used him as an example to all the players there. You could be the next Strus if you can come out and shine and play the way we want you to play. And again, you have to play the way they want you to play. You go out there and do your own thing, you're out of there. If you want to step out and try to do your own thing, then the opportunity is not going to be there. And Eric Spoelstra loves to say, he's quoted all the time, he said it multiple times to me, he loves to say that the Miami culture is not for everyone. It's not for every player. You have to accept it, and you have to immerse yourself in it. And if you're not ready for it, they'll find somebody else who is. And that's why I think Jimmy Butler, who is so hard driving, fits so well in Miami. That Miami culture fits him like a glove.
And you talked about Coach Eric Spoelstra. What is your special relationship with him? I know you're good friends. Do you get in touch with him often?
Well, we text each other, when I'm here and he's in the States. We have a tendency to text each other. He texted me after they made the Celtics. I congratulated him first on winning the Celtics. I think I said something like, that was really easy. That was really easy. And then I said, good luck, on to the next, and, congrats. And he wrote back and said something like, texted back something like saying, yeah, there was a lot of agony, and then there was also a lot of joy in that series. And now something like now it really starts.
Now, what about the ability of Coach Spo and the organization to find unheralded players, many undrafted players, and then bringing them up to the active roster and making them play so well, like Duncan Robinson, Udonis Haslem was undrafted, and so on down the line?
Well, I think it really comes down to their scouting group. They have a really strong scouting group led by Chet Kammerer, and he's been with the organization as long as Pat Riley's been on. He's been with Pat for many years, and he's their lead assistant. He was director of player development for many years, and he just moved aside, but now is a special assistant to Pat, who is the president. And I've had an opportunity to know him as well, and he talked, and it's funny how they defer to each other. Spo will take, when we get Duncan, that's Chet. Chet was the one that found him. And Chet told me the story of he got a call from a agent friend and said, you got to come over and look at this guy. He's an incredible shooter. And he said, well, who is it? And he says, Duncan Robinson. He says, oh, I know that guy from Michigan. And the guy says, come on, please, come on, do it as a favor for me. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry. I went as a favor to that guy to go over and watch Duncan shoot. And then he walked into the gym, and Duncan was by himself, and they put him through the paces. And I don't know, he did something like, he made something like 125 consecutive threes before missing 2 in a row. He'd missed 1 occasionally, but that was the drill. How many you can make without missing 2
in a row? Yeah,
in a row. And usually the really good players are like 50, 60, or 70. He was something like over 100, 120. I might be exaggerating. I'm not sure. I can't remember how much it was. But he blew him away. And he said, I turned around and called Spo right away, and I said, Spo, you got to take a look at this guy. This guy can really shoot it. He's got good size. He releases the ball high. And Spo said, what's his name? He goes, Duncan Robinson. He said, yeah, I know Duncan Robinson. He played at Michigan. He goes, yeah, you got to take a look at him. And he goes, well, okay, I'll take a look. He was kind of supposed to, he was kind of resist, I'm not really sure I want to take a look at him, but I will. Duncan came in and started practicing, or went into some workouts with him, and then got him into some scrimmages, and Spo was sold, and and then the history is made. He's, what is he, the highest paid
right,
undrafted player in the NBA history. So and that all started from Chet, and then Chet will say, well, Spo will always say about Chet that he goes he finds these guys. I don't know where he finds them. You got to give him all the credit for finding these guys. And then Chet will turn around and say about Spo, it says, well, we find these guys. We as a group find these guys, but they're not going to be anywhere unless Spo develops them. And Spo's touch and ability to develop players is very unique and special. And so they're constantly giving each other the credit, when obviously it's a culture, heat culture.
Well, Coach Tim, let's talk about the NBA playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
First, the journey of the Miami Heat. They lost their first playoff game to Atlanta in the play-in series, and for a while it looked like they wouldn't even make the playoffs. Then they played against Chicago in their second play-in series, and in the fourth period they were down. But they came back to win. Mm-hmm. And then they beat the number 1 seed, Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. Then they beat New York. Then they beat Boston in a 7-game duel. What does that say about the Miami Heat?
Well, I've always said this about Erik Spoelstra. He's special. He's a special coach. And, me and my friends, his friends, have recognized that about him for ages. We've known this for years, but I think people are just trying to now figure it out. I think it's now getting out there where people are starting to realize how special he is as a coach. And I think that's great, and that's great for him. And we all, he was voted the top 20 coach in the NBA history. So of course he's that good, and people recognize. But I think he's just jumped to a whole new level. I remember watching that Chicago game, and I remember living and dying with Spo as that game, because they were leading, and then they were down, and then they were leading, and then they were down, and then they were down in the last few minutes, and you're thinking, okay, that's the season, that's it, that's over. And then suddenly they find a way. And then they beat Milwaukee in game 1. I think that was crucial. They beat New York in game 1. They beat Boston in game 1, all on the road. And so that kind of set a tone and gave them a sense of confidence. And I was hoping that they would find a way to beat Denver, because Denver had been resting for a long time, maybe not so sharp. And I thought maybe they might come out and sneak out that game 1. But Denver obviously did a really good job of preparing and keeping themselves ready to go. And Jokic was unbelievable. And they weren't able to get that game 1. So we'll see where it goes from here. I think the Denver size is going to give Miami fits throughout the whole series. I think that's the reason why, is because they outsize Miami in every position. Point guard positions, guard position, small forward, power forward, and obviously the center position. They're taller than positionally than in every position. So I think that'll give them some problems.
Let's dive into the NBA Finals. You've already opened up the topic, Denver versus Miami, game number 1. A game that I thought wasn't played according to Spo's rules. They took only 2 free throws the entire game compared to 20 free throws given to Denver. They also had 17 more field goal attempts than Denver, but they shot 40.6% from the floor. Denver shot 50.6%. Miami had a lot of 3-point attempts. 40% of the total shots came from beyond the arc, compared to 34% for Denver. But a lot of firepower wasn't there for Miami. Jimmy Butler, 13 points. Strus was 0. Caleb Martin, 3 points. And Duncan Robinson, 3 points. You think that was an aberration? You think that maybe Miami got a little too tired playing against Boston in that 7-game series, while the other side was resting and cooling their heels in Denver?
Well, I think all those things are possibilities, and I think we won't know until we, see what happens in Game 2, and then when the series gets back to Miami. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be, a certain sense of letdown. There's a couple of things that are going on in Denver. One is, like you said, Denver's well rested. The other thing is the altitude in Denver. I remember going and watching a Denver game with Miami Denver in Denver. Spo invited me down. I was at the Summer League, or I was at the D-League showcase, and he invited me down. So I flew down to Denver to watch the game and met the team there. And they were ending their East Coast, West Coast schedule, and Denver was their last stop. And this was with LeBron and Dwayne and Chris Bosh, and this is when they were absolutely dominating everybody. And they had like a 6 or 7 game road trip, and it was their last game, and they went out and just got destroyed by Denver. They got beat by, Denver wasn't that good at that time, and of course Miami was the best team coming off, NBA championship, but they just got destroyed. They lost by like 36, 38 points in that particular game. And and what happened is that they just couldn't that quickly turn around and adjust to the elevation. If you've never played in elevation before, you get short breath. It's almost like if I may use the example, when we went to Cambodia and we played without aircon in that hard gym. I mean, we just didn't know how to adjust in the beginning. It took us a while. So I think the quick turnaround from Boston, which is at sea level, all the way up to Denver, which is it's a tough adjustment, and they may be better adjusted going into Game 2. But they, as you saw the quotes afterwards with Jimmy Butler and Spo himself, and all saying they didn't attack the rim enough, and that's usually oftentimes fatigue. You settle for shots, and then if you don't have your legs, you're not going to make your 3-point shots. And Strus obviously didn't have his legs. Caleb Martin, who played so brilliantly against Boston, didn't have his legs. And the shots that they would normally make, they were missing. So can you count Miami out? Of course not. You can never judge a team by one game. So Denver looked awfully good in that game. And Jokic did whatever he wanted. He made every pass that he wanted. Murray hit every shot. I think I read somewhere where he made 12 baskets, and I think 9 or 10 of them were considered high difficulty shots.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah, but they still went in. So are those high difficult shots still going to go in? So you can't count out Miami, but Denver certainly got that leg up, and they certainly look good. But again, I think that positional advantage they have in terms of size is something that's going to be an issue for Miami. They're going to have to hit their shots, but they're going to have to get to the rim and get some easy baskets as well.
What about some strategic adjustments on the part of Miami? A lot of people are saying one strategy could be just stop Murray and just give Jokic his points, because he's going to get those anyway. And one man is not going to be able to beat Miami. But if you stop Murray, then that's a major part of your defensive scheme. And then plus, maybe play a little more zone, so that that dares Denver to take those shots from the outside, takes away Jokic, maybe not double team Jokic, so it takes away his passing. You just take away his passing with maybe hard-nosed one-on-one defense, so he doesn't give the ball up to too many guys, and invite him to just try to beat Miami by himself. What do you think of those?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that they can still experiment with. The problem is they don't want to go too far away from what they do and what they do well. They do zone well. There's been talk about picking up earlier and putting more pressure, or doing a full court zone into a half court zone. But Jokic is such a great passer in the zone, and they have such great shooters. It's really going to be tough to cover. I just don't think they can rely totally on zone to change it. But Spo really has a really good feel for changing it up and throwing it out there when it's effective. Playing it 2 or 3, 4 minutes at a time and pulling it off, not allowing teams to really get a feel for it. So they're still. I don't think that they're. They only gave. I can't remember the final score, but it wasn't like Denver scored a whole lot of points.
No,
it's just that Miami scored under 100.
That's right.
So I don't think they're going to be too upset about their defense. Jokic had a great passing, but again, they can't afford to let him just sit there and go one-on-one against Bam, because Bam's too important to what they do, and Bam's going to get in foul trouble trying to stop him one-on-one. So, I think that's a primary issue for them. Bam played a great game because they played him single coverage with Jokic, and Jokic is a great offensive player. He's not a great defensive player, especially with guys with quickness. So I think they're going to continue to attack Jokic, and I think they're going to have to give Bam help. There's been talk about playing 2 big guys out there and letting Bam go get somebody else so that someone can focus on. But then that takes away a lot what they do offensively, because that's a big adjustment. So I don't think this early in the series you want to make big adjustments, at least in my experience. The problem with Jokic, he's like, if I may use the example, he's like Jumar in our league. If you spend too much time guarding him, then you open up the floor for the Marshall Lassiters. You open up the floor for the guys that are around him, especially in the old days when you had Arwin Santos and Alex Cabognot. Those guys would shoot lights out. So if you spend all your time trying to stop him, then you open it up over here. But if you don't have a guy that can at least be big and tall against Jumar, then Jumar is just going to eat you up all day long. So you're constantly in that quandary. Do we help or do we get that? And you're right. I think that's going to be the decision that Spo's going to have to make. I think what they did last game was that they're not going to let Jokic go out and score 30, 40 points. They may change that for game 2. But I think, in my own opinion, that would be too quick to change. I don't think that I think that Spo, if I was in his shoes, I would say, okay, we didn't hit shots today, and we got to attack the rim more. But I think defensively they did what they wanted to do. And so they just got to get better at what they're doing and let that game plan grow a little bit as they go forward. Now, if you get down 2-0 or 3-1 or something like that, you might have to make some really big adjustments. But remember, this is not like the PBA where you're playing in the same stadium all the time. It's a big difference between playing in Denver and playing in Miami. It's a huge difference, and especially because Denver plays at elevation. It's a huge difference. So even if they don't win a game in Denver, they're still going to have a shot because they're going to be able to win their 2 games in Miami. So if they can get 1 in Denver, then that's huge. If Denver can get 1 in Miami, that's huge. It's like playing tennis and you're holding serve. All they have to do is hold. Denver has to hold serve here, and Miami has to try to break serve one time. If they break serve one time, now the home court goes to Miami. So game 2 is crucial. Game 1, you want to get that because it sets the tone, and it kind of validates your game plan and how you're going to move forward. And you put the adjustments on the other team. But losing game 1 is not that big of a deal. I think people look at it and say, okay, they make absolutes about that game 1. Okay, automatically they couldn't stop Jokic. Jokic had so many assists. Jamal Murray hit all shots, and every game is different. So I expect game 2 to be very different. I'm not saying Miami's going to win it, but I expect game 2 to be very, very different.
Well, no matter who wins this series, I think it's going to be a very exciting one. I think it'll go down to the wire, and whether Miami wins or not, I think the Heat already established what it can do under seriously dire circumstances in the playoffs. And for that, I think Coach Spo deserves tremendous credit for just lifting a number 8 seed team all the way to the finals. Maybe your thoughts about, your final thoughts, Coach Tim, about the finals and something for the fans to look forward to in terms of how this series could end. Will it be a short series? Will it be a long series? And who wins it in the end?
Well, I'll be honest. My heart says Miami's going to win it. I really want Miami to win it. And I'm a big fan of Spo, and I got to know some of the players, and so you have that kind of you want them to do well. You end up being a big fan. My heart is so much with Miami, but my brain is saying it's going to be tough for them. But I've said that every series. I've said it's going to be tough when they play Milwaukee. It's going to be tough when they play, New York. It's going to be tough when they play Boston, and they found a way each time. So I'm certainly not ruling them out. I think Denver is going to cause a little bit of different problems that they've had with Boston and Milwaukee and the Knicks. And these are things they're going to have to try to figure out and overcome. What? Miami's been in 3 of the last 4 finals appearances, something like that. So they're finding their way in there. Now it's just a matter of time before they pull another one out and Spo gets another NBA championship.
Well, if they beat Giannis, maybe they can beat Jokic.
Yeah. Now, hey, we're going to see him in the World Cup.
That's right.
Giannis and Jokic both. That's going to be exciting.
Well, thank you very much again for your time. And before we end our special episode on Play It Right TV, we know how much his heart is with the Miami Heat, so we want to gift Coach Tim Cone this commemorative book of the Miami Heat 2013 NBA Championship. I got this personally in Miami a couple of years ago, and I thought maybe more than me, someone who knows Coach Spo should have this book on his table. So, Coach Tim, this is for you.
This is special because I know that you really, really cherish these things. And you've given me books before, and I've learned to cherish them. And I'm so happy to have this. And I can't wait to get through it and then set it on my coffee table and let everybody else see it. It's such a special gift. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it for Play It Right TV. I'm Kenito Hanson with Coach Tim Cone saying, see you again. Play it right all the time.